right, folks, welcome once again, everybody, to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Frank, here with my good buddy, Jamie Uyeyama. We have Greg Flamong producing the show as always. Before we get going, I wanted to mention it's a great time to sign up for Irish Sports Daily. You can go to the front page, click on the premium section, and sign up for a subscription today. We got spring football just around the corner. We have lots of stuff coming up with recruiting that's going to keep us busy as well. And so, great time to sign up. We also wanted to mention our sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing, founded by ND alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ on all of your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches, from All-Americans to All-Pros and associates to CEOs. You're in great hands with ESQ's custom clothing. Whether you're looking for a perfect fitting suit, a standout sport coat, or a perfect tuxedo for weddings or galas, ESQ's Master Tailor blend traditional hand stitching in each garment with Italy and England's best fabrics. Check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. Once again, that's esqclothing.com. All right, Jamie, time to get into it. We've been previewing the positions when it comes to spring football and all the battles that will be out there. We talked some quarterback and we talked some running back last week, and this week we're going to talk some wide receivers, tight ends. We'll see if we get to O-line, probably will. But this is kind of an interesting, I guess, spring here for a bunch of guys that are going to be fighting for positions here. We know that Quincy Porter is going to be on the roster. I'm not sure exactly how much he will participate in spring. I think that's a little unclear if he will at all. Chances are we may see him more in the summer. But again, I need to confirm and get a better idea of where he's at. So I know we've been working on that, and hopefully we'll have some info for the site here on that soon. But we do have Mylan Graham being added to the roster. Jaden Greathouse will finally be healthy again, so that will be exciting. Graham, I'm sure, is going to be battling it out with guys like Jordan Faison, and certainly a very, very big, spring for a lot of these wide receivers that are out there. Cam Williams, big spring for him, of course. Elijah Barres, Logan Soldate. Jamie, first of all, how do you see these guys all kind of landing in position-wise? If you had to look at the roster, how do you see each person competing? Do you think because they have Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter may not be a go this spring, that you may see Cam Williams be more of a boundary type? How do you see this all unfold?
Yeah, Williams is the only one that I could see moving out of the group that from like his normal spot. I think him moving to the boundary kind of makes sense just for reps. At the same time, I know that he's probably going to be in the field regularly, but just from a reps perspective, it just makes sense for him to be there, because if there's no Porter, then it's him and Gilbert there basically, because obviously you got Bettis Jr. and Devin Fitzgerald, but you don't expect those guys to take the majority of the reps, or for even either one of those guys to get reps with the twos during the spring. So I think it makes sense for Cam Williams to move over there for the spring, especially because if you think about where they're at with the field, you have Faison, you have Graham, you have Elijah Burris, you have possibly Caden Finley there too. That's a lot of guys, right?
Yeah.
And obviously Logan Saldate, he's a guy who could, he's the backup at the slot, but some of those guys could also play slot too. So I think those two positions are like overly crowded right now. And boundary, obviously, they have so many numbers. It's crazy to think, Mike, that they've had some springs where they've had like 7 healthy receivers.
Yeah.
And now they're going to have like pretty much double that. So it's just a lot of options, right? And a lot of guys fighting for reps. So health could be like a big thing actually in the spring, because if you ended up like where Gilbert was last year, where he missed a good chunk of the spring because he broke his hand, that could really, really hurt a guy in the competition this year.
it's when you look at I guess I just look at the situation and for guys like Logan Saldate and Cam Williams and some of these others that have been around for a while that just haven't quite uh, materialized. This is kind of a make or break thing. And boy, for if you're a true freshman, you got guys like Kadon Finley. We've mentioned Dylan Faison, Braden Robinson, Devin Fitzgerald, Bubba Frazier. Those are 5 guys walking in the door here, and they're gonna be looking for reps too, and man, it could be right now when you look at Greathouse, Graham, Frazier, Cam Williams, Faison, Bettis Jr., Devin Fitzgerald, Micah Gilbert, Braden Robinson, Dylan Faison, Elijah Perez, Kadon Finley, Logan Saldate. Those are guys, and that's without Quincy Porter. Those are all guys who are going to be looking for reps, and you're going to have to it's kind of make or break. There's really not a lot of opportunity because there's going to be such a loaded roster. And you're right. Before 7 guys maybe is what we were looking at that would be legit guys that we'd have to focus on. But now you got these 5 true freshmen coming in the door, early enrollees, and that just really kind of mucks everything up. And so if you're a guy like Cam Williams and you're a guy like Logan Saldate, and Elijah Perez and Jerome Bettis Jr. And I mean, the time is now. If you don't do it now, who knows? There's not going to be a lot of time and a lot of opportunity to impress people, especially once fall rolls around as well. So, it's a good learning experience. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad that all these freshmen are here because just learning the routes and understanding the concepts, that's been kind of the thing that has kept Cam Williams, from our understanding, from kind of exploding so far, is just the overall understanding of routes and coverages and where he's supposed to be in various situations and the keys that he has to read. So it's real big spring for these guys. And if I'm Mike Brown, I gotta love this situation because when you can have this much competition, there's going to be these guys are going to be pushing each other, and that's going to make everybody better. So I really think that you're going to see a big elevation of Notre Dame's receivers this spring and fall, and I think that they're going to surprise a lot of people come fall. Once the games start rolling around, the competition and the talent is going to be so fierce that it's going to raise the room and it's going to raise the productivity of all these players. And so I'm excited about it. I know one guy who's going to be real excited about it, and that's CJ Carr. He's got some really good talent and a lot of returning talent coming back. Sure, it would be nice to have, maybe Malachi Fields back. Of course it would. But, hopefully Porter can take that role and become that guy. But at the same time, there's just going to be so much talent and I really we've seen KK Smith make a lot of plays at Notre Dame in a short period of time with very limited reps. And I think truth be known, he was, I don't want to say pushed out the door, but it was probably known to him that it was going to be hard for him to find an opportunity at Notre Dame moving forward. And we saw that he can make plays. And so you're losing a guy like that because you feel like you got guys that are better. You got to feel good about the roster right now at wide receiver. Thoughts here?
It's a best shape they've been in. I can't even remember when, Mike. Like, obviously, when you think about they've had times when it was like Floyd and Tate, where they've just had absolute just studs at the top, but the drop off from those guys was so massive that it just wasn't even close. And then obviously, just like the overall depth. It's different now because of the 105, so scholarship numbers have changed. And I think one thing they've done a really good job of is just addressing the fact that when Marcus Freeman was the first year as head coach, I think they probably had 9 scholarship receivers total. And then all of a sudden, two or three of those guys get hurt in fall camp, who were key guys, and they were in a horrible position for that first year, for the first few years.
Yes.
And that was like a hole that they couldn't dig out of. And at that time too, they weren't taking undergrad transfers, so they didn't have that option either. Now, I mean, easily, I think after this season, you're probably going to see some guys leave because there's just too many guys crowded around that area.
Yeah.
But they're still going to sign like a decent amount there. They're going to have. I don't think they're ever going to have problems in the room again, similar to what they had before. They just seem that they're going to be in such a better in such better shape in terms of depth and just overall talent. It's just not even comparable to what it was before.
One thing I will say about the roster right now at wide receiver is you don't have a lot of 5-star frontline guys that you just come in and you're like, okay, that guy is just going to dominate, right? You got a guys like Bubba Frazier, right, who is 5'10", 175 pounds, comes in and certainly is going to need to build his body and get bigger. Braden Robinson, 5'7", 156. That's not the biggest size, certainly, and so that's a little bit of a concern. But his quickness and the things that he does on the field, you don't need to be 190 pounds to be effective if you're Braden Robinson. And he's going to play probably a very specialized role, kick return, punt return, that type of thing. But also, probably play some slot as time goes on and that type of thing, and be a kind of a gadget player. But what I'm trying to get at here is you got a lot of guys that I think are what I'd call developmental guys, guys that have a really high ceiling. Like once they get developed, they're going to be really good players, but it's not something that I think is going to happen right out of the gate, and I think Cam Williams fits that mold for sure. I think when you looked at Elijah Barres, another guy that kind of fits that mold, who I think is going to be a very good player. It's just a little undersized and had to, develop a little bit. So that's where they're at right now. Is they got a lot of guys at wide receiver that I would call developmental guys. And the next step is once those developmental guys materialize, like Jordan Faison, Greathouse, hopefully Mylan Graham and Porter and a couple of these other guys, that's going to draw in the 5-stars, the guys that you're really looking for that can come in and play right away. And, we saw that in D-line where there's a lot of guys that are kind of frontline, big-time guys coming in that they have the body already pretty much. They'll need to develop a little bit and also develop their skill set. But, they're close. They would be closer to playing than some of these guys coming in. Like I don't really expect a whole lot of these true freshmen to see much minutes or anything like that. Because I just think that the guys in front of them are going to be more experienced, more developed, and these guys got a little bit ways to go. Greg, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, good morning, boys. Just wanted to bring up from the chat, Michael Parks asked about the FSU coach that Notre Dame brought in, Sean Shivers, I believe it is. He was supposed to be at Florida State. He came in. He's going to be assistant wide receivers coach since we're talking about wide receivers. Any thoughts on his hiring and what he might bring to the room there?
Jamie?
Yeah, obviously he doesn't have like a ton of experience. He was a good player, right? Like a good player or played at Auburn, played at Indiana. I think the connection there is that I think Dalen McCullough recruited him to obviously Dalen McCullough used to be on the staff at Notre Dame as the running backs coach. Dale McCullough, I believe recruited him to transfer to Indiana, but then Dale McCullough obviously left to go to Notre Dame. So there must be some kind of connection there. Oh, obviously he's from Florida, so I don't know. Maybe there's a J1 Snyder connection there. Do I know what kind of coach he's going to be? No, like he was supposed to. He was going to be a GA. He was a GA at Eastern Michigan. He was at Florida State. We'll see. But usually they're pretty good at identifying these young guys as and that they're going to be a pretty good coach one day. And obviously he's going to get a chance to learn under Snyder and work there too, and do a lot of work. I imagine he'll do a lot of work with the backs, but I'm sure maybe some stuff with receivers as well. I think anytime you're taking somebody from another program, even though they're not really playing Florida State this year, it's a good thing, right? It means you're doing something right. they're and it shows they're in a better position as a program than Florida State right now.
Yeah, there's no question about that, and I'm sure that every young coach in the country wants to work under Marcus Freeman and the staff that they have here. So I have a feeling that they'll probably get kind of the guys they want when they go after these guys, and it doesn't seem like it's taken long to find these guys. And it's one of these things where I know a lot of people want to know information about these guys, but it's really hard to find much information about them because they're really kind of I don't want to say invisible in the program, but because they're not. It's just you don't really know a lot about them coming in because they don't have a long history. They don't have a track record of developing players and talent like that. So it's hard to really say a whole lot about them other than these coaches know other good coaches. They talk to each other, and so I got to feel it's probably a good hire. It's very rare that they hire somebody that isn't a good hire in those positions. It's almost always somebody that moves very quickly through the system, and
Oh yeah,
that's what they're looking for.
And just to add to it, there's so many guys now that that you see, Mike, that were interns or GAs or analysts at Notre Dame that have like risen up like
Quickly.
I mean, obviously you look at Chris O'Leary. I mean, he was a GA and worked his way up from analyst, was coaching the Rovers, gets promoted to safeties coach. A few years later, he's a defense coordinator in the NFL. People might remember Christian Parker. He was, I believe he came 2017, was Mike Elko and Clark Lee when they had arrived at that time. Christian Parker got hired as like a assistant DB coach, basically like an analyst, whatever, during that time. He's a defensive coordinator in the NFL now. Like that's 2017. He was just a guy there. Like in less than 10 years, he's defensive coordinator in the NFL. So it can happen quickly, obviously, for a lot of these guys. And it just shows that there's a lot of these guys who are pretty qualified coaches that end up rising fast.
Yep. All right. So again, back to the receivers. Is there anything that you're a little bit concerned about when it comes to this group? Is there anything that you may look at and say, you know what, I don't know about this at this point?
Well, I think Porter's health, I think that's a big thing. Obviously, Micah Gilbert had just had some injuries last year, right? So I think health on the boundary, that is a thing. I think Micah Gilbert, if Micah Gilbert is the starter at the boundary, I think he's going to be a pretty darn good player. Like, I think he was already on track to be like a starter and a pretty darn good player. Is that going to be someone who's going to be at that Malachi Fields level? I think we'll have to see. Like, I don't think right now you'd say probably not, but I think it's on the table for a guy like Gilbert or Porter, maybe even Cam Williams. I think it's just kind of figuring out who's going to step up out of those guys behind Faison and Greathouse. And you assume Mylan Graham is going to be one of them and that he's going to be someone who's heard from this year. I also think that there's guys like Elijah Burris is someone to, I know there was a question about like an under the radar thing. I don't even know what counts as under the radar now, Mike, because everybody knows so much about the team and everybody knows everything. Like, is Elijah Burris, is he technically under the radar when there was like a lot of people were talking about him last year? He had a really good spring. He had a good, fall camp. He was the best out of the freshman receiver. But it seems like because Graham came, because there's Faison there, also Kadon Finley's coming up. It's like people maybe forgot about him, but I would say he's like an under the radar guy that people are talking about now. He could end up being a pretty important player for Notre Dame this year. That's on the table. And I think that's the thing about the receiver position in general is that there's just enough guys there that people who could be surprises wouldn't really be a surprise based on talent. It's just more of a surprise based on the guys in front of them.
Yeah. speaking of the freshmen, the guys coming in, I just wanted to get your quick thoughts on where you think everybody's going to line up. Caden Finley, where do you think he'll line up when it comes to spring practice and maybe even fall?
I think he's going to be in the field. I mean, I could see him in the slot too. Maybe I think he could end up being, because I think there's a lot of similarities between him and actually Jaden Greathouse. So
I
I could
agree.
see
Yeah.
him being like a bigger slot. I just think, and it might be something that they want to move him there right away to kind of get him ready to be like the next guy. And I could see that, but at the same time, that's where I probably see like Bubba Fraser could be a slot. He could be the field. He would be out of those guys most likely the field out of those guys. Him and
Faison.
well, Dylan Faison is also going to be a field too. So it's like that's the thing. They have a lot of guys there. Fitzgerald is the only guy who's going to be a boundary. So I just don't know. And then obviously too, Braden Robinson, he's definitely a slot, right?
Yeah.
And the way I see it, because I know that Abe Froman asked about how often these small, fast guys, a la Scrap Richardson, actually hit. And I guess you could say like Bubba Fraser and Braden Robinson. I mean, Robinson is really small. He's like Tutu Atwell small. He's very small. And Bubba Fraser, but he's also, smaller. The truth is those guys don't always hit, but it's like kind of why you take two guys who are like, electric speed guys, and you hope that one of them hits. Because if one of them hits and that guy ends up being this dynamic speed guy for you, or one guy ends up being an elite returner, that's huge. Because I would say, Mike, too, even if you go back to a guy like CJ Sanders, never became the receiver that people thought he was going to be. Was his value as a returner was more than worth it. I mean, he took probably 4 or 5 kicks back to the house in his career at Notre Dame in just 3 years or whatever. That's worth it. That is something that I think adds a different dynamic to your program. So if one of those guys can be an electric kick returner, punt returner, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and the difference with Scrap is, he was not a receiver coming in, so he had a lot to learn. Braden Robinson is a very accomplished receiver. He just is. He's a very good route runner.
Yeah.
Outstanding hands. You wouldn't take Braden Robinson unless you knew that he was a very good, accomplished player at the receiver at that position, because he's just too small. Yeah, exactly. So, where Bubba Fraser's a little bit bigger, but just electrifying. I mean, both those guys just have the quickness and explosion that you're looking for to become that. But then so does Dylan Faison, so you've got really 3 guys that could really turn out to be something better than you imagine. And again, that's why I almost think that Caden Finley may end up as a slot, because you look at, he is very similar to Greathouse in that very good route runner, great ball skills, but also good body, knows how to use his body to get open. And so again, it'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds, because there's a lot of guys who could play field, which is good. And for a long time, Jamie, we just never had anybody who could play field that we would consider home run hitting ability, the ability to get vertical and make a lot of plays like that. They've got tons of those type of guys right now. They need more boundaries is what they need more than anything. And so that'll be something that we'll see them focus on. Moving on, Jamie, the one position that I think a lot of people have questions about, probably the one position that everybody has the most question about, and that's at tight end. Not a lot of experience and production returning, unfortunately. Ty Washington played quite a bit last year, did some really nice things that was exciting to see. Cooper Flanagan, it was interesting seeing him listed at 247. I think that, if memory serves, that's probably the lowest I think he's ever been listed at Notre Dame. And again, recovering from a leg injury, you're going to lose a lot of muscle and things like that in the lower body, because you just can't work out like you're supposed to. You just don't have the health that you're looking for there. So I expect him to get bigger as winter lifting and spring and summer goes. I'd expect him to be in the 260 range when it's all said and done. Love seeing James Flanagan at 6'6", 251. I think that's a great weight, great size for him. Jack Larson, 6'3", 247. The interesting thing about Larson, and we've said this from the beginning, is he doesn't look like amazing when he's out there. It's just you throw him the ball and he catches it. And he's done that the entire time he's been here. Very good hands, very good route runner, underrated player. I'm not going to say he's going to be Eli Raridan, because I don't think he can be. It just doesn't have the size or the speed to do that. But he is a guy that can get open. He's a guy who's very sure with his hands, and we'll see. And then, of course, I really like Preston Friesel. I love the fact he came in early. 6'4", 208. That's about what I expected. If you can get him around 225 by the beginning of the season, that's pretty good. You don't expect him to play much. He's a developmental guy, but man, what a talent he is. So I like that there's talent here. It's just a lot of inexperience, not a lot of production. And I think when you look at the situation for Mike Denbrock and Harris Spiven, they've got some work to do to get these guys ready to go. And Eli was a very, very good player for Notre Dame. It may be tough just to even replace his productivity this year. If it is, I'm going to guess it's going to be James Flanagan's the guy that's going to do that. Or, could be a guy coming in, and Ian Premer. We'll just have to see what he looks like when he gets in the door. But he'll have the kind of size that you're looking for, and one heck of an athlete as well. But what do you think here, tight end position?
I think they're loaded with talent. It's just who's going to step up and kind of like emerge as the guy, or whether or not it's going to be like two guys or three guys, and how that's going to work itself out. Because I think if like Cooper Flanagan, him coming off the injury, you expect, because he missed the full season basically. Now he's going to be back. Like you said, he's got to get stronger. He's got to get all that, but I expect him to kind of be back at the level that at the very least he was at 2 years ago. Minimum, he is a high-end tight end too, because he can do more as a receiver than a lot of people think he can do. But also too, he's probably the best inline blocker of the team. Not even probably, he will be the best inline blocker on the team. And then I think James. Well, I was going to say
James Flanagan's going to knock somebody's head off. I'm telling you.
Well, because I actually think James Flanagan could be an inline, but I also see him doing a lot of some of that Tommy Tremble type of stuff.
Yeah,
because he is somebody that you could use as an H-back and run a lot of wham blocks, and he would knock the crap out of some unsuspecting DN on a trap or something like that. So, I really like what they're, and then obviously you saw Ty Washington do some of this stuff too last year in the run game. So I really like where they're going to be at in the run game and what they can do. I think they can do a lot more 12 and 13 this year in terms of what they're going to do, which, one back, two tight end, one back, three tight end, in terms of what they can do with the running game. I think that is on the table for them. It's just whether or not one or two of these guys can really emerge as that kind of like go-to guy. Like you said, Eli Raridan was kind of surpassed expectations. I think we all thought, he was in line for a big year, but in terms of what he did, like down the field, like he was incredible last year down the field. I don't know if they're going to get that same kind of thing this year. I think it's on the table for a guy like James Flanagan, because I think he can really run and stretch the field. And I think, like I said, I think Flanagan is Cooper Flanagan is a better receiver than a lot of people give credit for. I think Ty Washington catches the ball pretty well. And like you said, Larson is really, really good as a receiver. It's just which of those guys is going to kind of emerge there. And to me, Larson has to be so much better as a receiver, because I just haven't seen it from him as a blocker. And I think that's the kind of thing that's
Yeah.
kind of keeping him off the field, really, is you can't play and be a starter or play and be the second tight end if you aren't a high level blocker. Like that's just what it is at Notre Dame. And that's going to be the big thing with him. But if it would be my guess is that I think James Flanagan's going to emerge as a starting tight end by the time you get to the season. I don't know if we're going to get there by the end of spring. I just think that I think he was going to come on and he was going to be, whether or not he was going to get the ball that much in the playoff, if they play in the playoff, I don't know. I think he was going to play a lot in the college football playoff, Mike, for Notre Dame. I think he was going to, play 10, 15, maybe 20 plays a game in some games. And I think that was on the table for him. And he's just someone who I think has got a chance to really skyrocket this year. And I would say, like, Freisel obviously is going to physically develop, really excited about his future. Ian Premer is such an exceptional athlete. I think they're going to find a way to get him on the field this year. Like because he's not going to be a guy who sticks around. He's not going to be 5 years at Notre Dame. Might not even be 4 years. He could be a 3-and-out guy. So they're going to have to get him on the field at some point. I just really think that he's too talented to keep off the field. It'll be about how quick he can pick things up. Obviously, Mayer was somebody who could do it right away. He was a tight end that came in the summer. So we'll see where they're at. But that first Michael Mayer season, Coach Hump kind of brought it up there, was that 2020 season, if you look at it, Tommy Tremble and Brock Wright were both coming back, and they were kind of in line to have bigger roles, and they did have bigger roles, but Mayer came in and was so talented that he became, like, essentially, the top option, not just top option at tight end. He was arguably, him and Javon McKinley, it was like 1 and 1A in terms of who was the top receiver that year for Notre Dame. I don't think Premer, that's not going to happen because the receiver, they're too talented. And that's where you might see, like, I think the production dip down a bit at tight end.
Yeah.
But they're not without options. And I think they have a chance to be really, really good there. And I don't know. My money would be on James Flanagan emerging from the pack.
That's what I see happening too. Will it happen the first game of the season? I don't know, but I think he's going to play a lot. And then I think as the season goes on, it's going to be the James Flanagan show. I just feel that strongly about his potential, and we know he's as tough as nails, right? He's going to be the guy that's going to come in there and want to hurt people when he's in their block. Interesting thought I had here, Jamie. Because you don't have Love, because you don't have Price, you have the backs you do, and I'm not discounting them by any stretch of the imagination, but none of them are probably going to be a top 7, top 6 player, in the NFL draft. They may not even go in the first round, some of these guys, so there is a talent, I don't want to say deficit, because it's not really that. They're just different players. Do you think you can anticipate, considering what we know Notre Dame will have at offensive line? We know there's a bunch of guys that are going to be competing and probably deserve to play. Guys like Will Black, Matty Augustine, Sullivan Absher, they're all going to be battling it out, trying to basically get a slot. And so any thoughts about maybe because your backs aren't quite as shifty and explosive, that maybe you may go a little bit heavy with a 6th offensive lineman at times in the running game, short yardage, that type of thing, considering you don't know what you have right now at tight end?
I mean, I could definitely see that short yardage. I mean, the one thing is that we haven't really seen it from Mike Denbrock. That hasn't been something that he's done. So maybe that would be my question about it. But I think, right now they're coming back. They got 6 guys coming back with starting experience. So right there, you have 6 guys already there. And that doesn't include Will Black or Matty Augustine. And I do think both of those guys are going to push to play this year.
Yes,
so
I agree.
If you look at that and you say they have an 8 there, we know they've had a bunch of injuries. So there's that has something that has happened and has been a problem for them. So, but let's just say they're all healthy. And if Will Black or Augustine is really, really like starter worthy, but not starting, or even Absher or something like that, who's there, because I think he's somebody that he's got to really kind of earn it this spring. I think that that is something that's going to happen for him. I could see it. I could see that happening. And to me, yeah, so like kind of turning it into the competition on the offensive line and the positions there. Obviously, Anthony Knapp is secure. Like he's going to be there. I do think too, Matt, or Mike, sorry. Anthony Knapp, I think, has a chance to be a higher pick than a lot of people think.
Oh, I agree 100%.
I think he's going to be a higher pick. And you know, whether they view him as a tackle or guard or whatever, I do think he's probably going to be a very high pick, because I don't think you start 4 years or, you know, out of school and play at a high level, which I think he's going to be at he was a much higher level last year than he was as a freshman. And he's going to be at a higher level this year. I think he's going to be a high pick, like much higher pick than people think. But, you know, you have him, you have Craig is going to be out in the spring. So you got Auding at center. Absher's going to be there at that left guard spot. Charles Juggesaw, you don't expect him to, you know, be back in the spring as far as we know, as of right now. If he comes back, limited, I would say is probably a good guess. But Gerby Lambert, I think, will move out to right tackle, back to that spot. So if you have him there, that means that right guard spot's open. I would say that Will Black, you know, because he was working at guard last year, he's got a chance to go in there and like really like earn a job. And whether that's kind of saying, hey, Charles Juggesaw, when you get back, you got to come back and earn it, or Sullivan Absher, you have to prove that, hey, you're not just handed the starting job. You got to go and show it, because either Charles is going to come back and Will Black's going to slide over and take your spot if you're not playing up to a certain level. I think that is the one thing that I'm really going to be watching in the spring and like kind of fall camp and all that, because I do think that is on the table. And obviously too, we don't know that they wouldn't move Augustine inside, or if they thought Augustine was good enough, they said, well, Gerby, you're going to stay inside or something like that. Right. Like I think all of that's on the table. I do think in my opinion, it suits Lambert best to move back to tackle and be there. And I think he could be a really, really high level player there.
We'll get more into the O-line on the next episode and everything, because there's a lot to discuss there. But I agree with you. I think that you got two players in Black and Augustine who we've been doing this a long time, Jamie, and we know when a guy's like right there, you know, you can just see it. And both those guys, when we watched mop-up duty of those guys, both those guys are right there. I mean, they are right there. And so I think it's great. I hope that Will Black comes in there, plays right guard, and just dominates, because I want it to be a difficult position and decision to be made on whether, you know, hey, it's not Charles' job, right? Charles, you got to go earn that, right? You don't get to just step in here and take the job. You have to go earn it. Same thing with Sullivan Absher. If Black is playing really well, you know, and Sullivan Absher isn't playing as well at the other side, you know, it's great to have that. And so I hate to say it, because you want Charles to be back in the spring and getting his reps and getting his body right and all that type of stuff. You'd love to see that, but it may be a blessing in disguise that he's out, in that you get Matty Augustine and Will Black more reps, so they're ready to go and really push this and see what happens. So we'll get more into it. I do want to say I do completely agree with you on Anthony Knapp, especially if he could get to 310, 312. With his ability to run block, he could play guard, he could play center, he could play anything in the NFL, but he's got to get in that 310 range. I think he's at 304 now, but you know, if you could get to 310, even 315, and still keep your quickness, just his ability to run block is really, really impressive. He's the best, in my opinion, the best run blocking left tackle they've had since Zach Martin, and that's with McGlinchey playing that position. That's with Alt playing that position. I'm sorry, Knapp's a better run blocker than both those guys are. He just is. He's just very, very sound. And so I agree with you. I think he's going to be a second round pick at the worst when it's all said and done, because he's got all the experience. And let's be honest, whoever drafts Billy Schrauth, he's probably going to go in the third round. That's going to be the biggest steal of the draft. I'm telling you, Billy Schrauth's going to be a big time player in the NFL. He's going to play 10, 12 years, probably make a couple Pro Bowls. He's got his head on right, and man, he was playing as well as anybody, and so if he becomes a third round pick, that's going to be a steal. I think he's a second round player. I personally think he's a first round player myself. I really do, but I understand why he would be a third round player or second round player for some teams, but they're crazy. He's going to be a really, really talented player for whoever takes him. All right. Let's get to some questions. We got a lot of questions coming out here, and we'll see what get through as many as we can. All right. Do you still feel good about the 2027 recruiting, giving all the coaching changes? I mean, I do think that impacts. I really do. Is it going to kill them? No. And I think a big part of it is here's the difference. In the past, none of these kids would have had any sort of relationship with Brian Kelly at all, right? Most of these kids know Marcus Freeman. They have his phone number. They talk to him. They know a lot about Notre Dame, and they also know a lot about Marcus Freeman. So I think that helps you in for guys that they lost to, say, linebacker and defensive back and D-line, because they lost those coaches. I do think it sets you back a little bit, but I think having Marcus Freeman there can kind of ease that a little bit. And let's be honest, he's gold with the parents. He's gold with the high school coaches. He's gold with everybody. And so I think Notre Dame has been very smart and very attentive on making sure that Marcus is out there talking to these players right now and kind of helping with that transition. I know that they've spent a lot of time, pretty much every day, out there with Marcus, trying to smooth over these coaching changes and that type of thing, and very, very smartly done. Any thoughts from you on that, Jimmy?
Well, yeah, and I would also, give a shout out to a guy like Carter Allman too, who's like very involved there. Obviously, when Notre Dame was going through staff changes last year, and when Chad Bowden left, that was, he was like a point man on so many of those recruitments, and Carter Allman had to step up, and others had to step up, and they obviously expanded the recruiting and personnel department this year with a couple more hires, so they've got a little bit more in place to be able to handle it. I think the truth is that you just never know, and I know there's a bunch of questions about 2027 recruiting, and the truth is, to me, that almost all of them are like, hey, let's wait until March and then we'll reassess.
Yeah.
Because right now, they're not having a lot of guys visit campus right now. They're going to get, and it's how they've done it, basically under Marcus Freeman for the most part, is that they've gotten guys on campus while they're during spring practice, because they want them to see, hey, here's all our players. This is what they're doing during this time. These are how our coaches coach. We want to get you around here. They could get all the other parts of a visit too, but that's like the big selling point of the program, is like the culture that you see on the field and all of that too. So I think we got to wait and see till all these guys get there in March. I remember at this exact same time last year, Mike, we were thinking, well, it's been kind of slow for a bit. Like what's going on? And you had these changes and whatever. And okay, they decided they weren't going to have this year, and they weren't going to do that, and they didn't have a January junior day and all that. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see. Turned out pretty good. It turned out pretty good. So I would say it's different this year because of the changes. So let's wait and see until we get into March, and then we'll reassess.
Yeah, I think back to last year, and there were so many times between really February and signing day where it was like a complete and total roller coaster. One week you're like sky high, and the next week you're like, man, the wheels are falling off. And really, the portal was unfortunately very much that same way. And then the results were what the results were. And so, again, I think you just want to remind people that, hey, Notre Dame still has Marcus Freeman. Notre Dame is still a hot name as far as, a college team out there. And these guys haven't been on the road yet to really meet any of these prospects, right? I mean, they're just getting hired. So they haven't been able to get out and meet a lot of these guys. Yeah, they've had some phone calls and things like that, but you have to understand a lot of the competition, they've had multiple meetings with the D-line coach at Texas and multiple meetings with the D-line coach at Georgia and all these other places. And they don't really know Notre Dame's defensive line coach at this point. That's all going to change. The big thing is get them on campus. And Jamie, if you look at the situation, they've got a lot of guys coming in for junior day, a lot of important guys already coming in for junior day in March. And look, I lived in South Bend. I know what January's like. It's not fun. It's not a good situation. You don't want to bring a bunch of kids from Florida up to South Bend in January. You just don't. And it's way different than even here. I mean, tomorrow it's going to be 77 degrees and sunny here in Nebraska. We've had 3 inches of snow. So the entire year. So it's just different, climate. And people always say, it's pretty much the same geographical location, but you don't have the lake effect snow, right? Yeah. And you don't have permacloud. And trust me, permacloud will destroy your mood just as much as the snow will. Yeah. It will destroy your mood. You just get overwhelmed with the gray, and it just, so you want them to have a good experience.
Yeah. And just one other thing to add to that, they bring in all these early enrollees in January, and that first couple months are tough. They're very tough. There's a lot of guys who want to go home. They were like, yeah, maybe I didn't make the right choice because of some of the things that you're saying about the weather.
Oh, yeah.
And then the school's hard and all that. So when they actually start getting into playing football and practicing and they're doing it on the field, they're like, oh yeah, this is why I chose this place. It's another reason why they don't get those guys there, because you bring those guys on camp, you bring someone on campus in January and they're like, oh yeah, should I come? Oh, I don't know, man. It's like they're, you don't want to bring when the mood isn't good, because half of the selling point of bringing guys in is Notre Dame's players do such a good job of selling, the experience and being truthful about it. And they can say, especially for those young guys, all they know is the gray and the bad stuff that's going on at that time. So once they start getting into football and all that, it changes. And so it does make a lot of sense to kind of bring guys in when they do.
Yeah, it definitely does. And we just got to wait, as I mentioned, wait for March, wait for them to get on campus, wait for them to kind of get to know these coaches and see how they coach. And then we'll have a better understanding of where things are. The next question was about wide receiver, and I think we're very much in that situation as well. The guy was saying, hey, we showed that we could throw the ball downfield if we have the quarterback to do it, and that type of thing. And I get that, but until you start getting guys in the first and second round drafted, that's where that makes a difference. That's why Ohio State kept getting all those great players, is because every guy that come out of there would be drafted in the first or second round. And there's, that helps you a lot. And so I think for Notre Dame, they just haven't had the kind of consistency at wide receiver in the NFL. They haven't had a lot of luck or success. They just haven't had those players. And it's very difficult. Same thing with quarterbacks. It's hard to attract quarterbacks when you don't have somebody who plays in the NFL and reminds people, oh yeah, Notre Dame can develop NFL quarterbacks too. And, that's why a lot of the linemen like coming to Notre Dame, because Notre Dame puts lots of offensive linemen in the NFL. And by the way, they end up playing way better than they're drafted for some reason. You would think the NFL would figure this out by now, Jamie. You would think that they would figure it out, but every year they seem to discount Notre Dame's offensive linemen, and then they end up being really, really good players and guys that stick around for a long time. All right, let's see. Hypothetically, if Marcus was to leave Notre Dame, who would be the ideal replacement, and how would you feel about Anthony Weaver as head coach? I mean, I think Notre Dame would probably, if Marcus were to leave tomorrow or at the end of this season, I'm sure they would be looking for a veteran coach, somebody who has experience, because the roster will be very, very good at that point. And I also think you're going to want somebody with a lot of experience, because let's say Marcus leaves after a playoff run. And again, I hate even discussing this because I don't even want to think about the thought of this, but the question's been asked. So you would have just signed, especially if they had a good playoff run, one of the best classes in the country. And you're going to want to make sure that you bring in somebody who has some juice to be able to keep those players, not just the guys you just signed, but everybody else that's on the roster. You don't want them leaving to go somewhere else. So you really, I think Notre Dame would have to come up with a big time hire, a big name, somebody that can keep that whole thing together. And guess what? I think that they'd be able to attract that type of guy, because the roster would be so stocked at that point that it'd be pretty hard to screw it up. And as long as you can keep everybody that you just signed and all your best players on the roster, whoever comes in has got a playoff ready roster, and hardly anybody has that opportunity as a new head coach. And so again, I think it'll be a very attractive job, but you're going to have to bring a big name because you're going to want to have to try and keep those people. Any thoughts from you, Jimmy?
I don't know if it necessarily has to be a big name, like in terms of like, this guy's already won at a certain level. This guy's been to multiple college football playoffs or anything like that at some other program. I really don't think if you said today was the day, there is an ideal replacement, which was why, like, as all this NFL speculating was going on behind the scenes, we were like, okay, this would not be good for Notre Dame at this time, because there was not somebody, and how the coaching carousel was going at the time and all that. Like, there wasn't really anyone in place. Then again, you look at so many other years, Mike, where Luke Fickell would have been at that time, if he would have left Cincinnati at that time, and he would have been the number one choice. I think everyone would have said, yeah, it's obvious.
They would have taken him over Marcus Freeman.
Yes.
A lot of people would have. Absolutely.
I
wouldn't
think
have, but I think
have.
a lot. I wouldn't have. I just knew Marcus Freeman was going to be a star. I just did.
I mean,
and if you remember, I was I was pushing it from the very beginning. I really was.
Oh, I really liked Marcus Freeman, but I think even we could have been in the room and argued for him, and we would have lost to other people who would just said, yeah, this was the guy who was his head coach. And that's how people would have saw it at that time.
Absolutely. Swarbrick would have hired Fickell over Marcus Freeman, I bet. I bet he would have.
Yeah. And so it just shows you, though, that one of those things is like people who look like an A+, you just never know. So I don't really know who is going to be like so Anthony Weaver, perfect example of like, he's a guy who's worked his way up. Obviously, like Notre Dame alum, people, loved him as a player at Notre Dame, and he was a first-round pick, or not first-round, but he was a second-round pick, I believe. But multi-year started as a freshman. Been a long-time NFL assistant. He's a defensive coordinator now. Be a great story. And everything I've heard about him is that he is, man, an inspirational guy. The players just have utmost respect for him. Whatever. I have no idea how he'd fit in college football and making the transition to Notre Dame, or even if he'd be interested, whatever. Could have been a home run, could be not. Yeah. I don't really know. The number one guy that I am thinking of is of who might be someone the day that Marcus Freeman leaves is Chesney, who's at UCLA right now, who went from Holy Cross. It's not a place a lot of people win in football at Holy Cross, and he's getting them to the playoff. He's young. He goes, he takes over at James Madison. They're rolling there. They get to the playoff. He's going to UCLA. Everything I see about him, I'm like, this guy is going to win at UCLA. I think he's probably going to beat Lincoln Riley this year. Like, there's probably, he just seems like, I don't even know if they have the talent to do it, but he just seems like he's the kind of guy who's going to win some of those games. So to me, that's a guy who's a rising star, and he's won. So that would be a guy that I circled as like, hey, this would be a top candidate if and when that happens.
Yeah. It'd be interesting, and hopefully we don't have to worry about that for quite some time. And I got to figure it. I mean, I know people ask me about this every day, and to me, I mean, I think it's a what is the situation at the time type of situation. I don't think it's a situation where Marcus Freeman is going, man, I can't wait to get out of here. I want to get in the NFL or anything like that. I think what happened was teams were hitting Marcus Freeman at a very frustrating time in his coaching career at Notre Dame because of what happened in the playoff. I think that they had a really good chance to pull him at that time because of the frustration and all the other stuff that was going on. But, obviously they weathered the storm. Next year, you say you win the national championship, you got one of the best recruiting classes in the country. It's going to be really hard to turn that down. It's just really going to be hard for any coach to leave that. And hopefully that will be the case. All right. Besides Leonard Moore, which ND player has the best shot to be a first-team All-American in 2026? Who do you think, Yama?
I would say if I knew he was going to play the whole season, I would say KVA. But I don't know that he's going to play the whole season. I don't know when he's going to be back and how his rehab is going to go and all that. But to me, he was already playing at an All-American type of level last year. And I think he's going to be better this year once he's back healthy and all that. But I don't know if he'll play enough of the season to be an All-American, but forget about whether he's named it. I think he's going to be an All-American caliber player. Tate Johnson, I think that is somebody that could possibly be an All-American. I think that is on the table. I do think Adon Schuler's got a chance to be an All-American too. Like he's got a chance. Like, I would say Anthony Knapp might be has a chance to be an All-American.
Should be.
He has a chance, especially too because they look at guys who've started for multiple years. He could be an All-American. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's tough to be, because if people remember, Will Fuller wasn't like a consensus All-American, but he was an All-American. Like, you and I know, everybody knows, like he was a first-round pick. He was one of the best receivers in college football. So it's like one of these things where, do I think that like Jordan Faison could have one of the best seasons out of any receiver in college football? Yeah, I think that's on table. Greathouse could have whatever. Yeah. Do I think? Yeah, it's possible. Do I think they're going to be an All-American? Probably not, because it's going to be tough. They're probably not going to get enough targets and all that kind of stuff. But I know like Gerby Lambert could be an All-American. I think the thing about this, Boubacar, 15 sacks, Mike. Like you said, like if Boubacar he gets double-digit sacks, he's going to be an All-American. Bryce
I think
Young,
it can happen. Right?
Francis Brew. I think, I'm not saying all these guys are going to be All-American, because they're not. It doesn't work like that. I think the point is that you look up and down the roster, and you can look at all three levels. Like, do I think Drake Bowen is going to be an All-American? Probably not. Do I think he could be like one of the best linebackers in college football and have like a big jump and all of a sudden and beat it? It's possible. It is possible. And
I think he'd be like an all-conference player anywhere, in any league. He would be an all-conference guy, probably first team in a lot of places. Yeah.
So it's like one of these things where it's like tough to say, All-American and what someone's going to be, because you never quite know how it's going to be viewed. But like I think the one thing you could say is you could go through the whole roster and look at every position group and say, yeah, this guy has a chance to be one of the best at his position in all of college football. And they have that at every position. CJ Carr, obviously. I mean, he's a pretty obvious one too.
Yeah.
Like they have that at every position. At every position.
Yeah.
I think, and that is, I don't know.
I can't remember it's ever happened in any of the time I've been covering this. I've never seen Notre Dame this loaded, and not just frontline starter, but you bring in the second guy and he's not much worse than the first guy. I can't ever remember that happening. Ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
And
go ahead.
And sorry to interrupt, Mike, but the thing is too, is there are guys that we don't even mention that could come out of like not nowhere, but like could rise above all these guys we mentioned and just be, well, now that guy is that dude on this team.
Well, Tay Johnson's that guy for last year. Tay Johnson's that guy from last year.
Exactly.
I mean, everybody thought at the end of the year he's one of the very best players they had on the entire team, and he was too. He absolutely was. All right. Maybe a question for an off-season time, but curious your feelings about your job and how it's changed over the years. Been listening to Power Hour since Charlie's first year. College football now is almost unrecognizable. Is covering recruiting easier? Have you ever thought of, are you still having fun with this? Distant future, hanging it up? Are you going to hang it up? First of all, I mean, I love this job. I mean, I have the best job in the world. I don't ever anticipate me quitting just because I enjoy it so much. And I'm sure there are a number of people who would like me to quit. And that's just part of the thing. That's just part of the thing. And that's just the way it is. But for me, I just love this job. I've just been so fortunate. And it's not just that I've been able to do it and make a living of it, but just being able to work with my team here. I've got the best team as far as the best, personnel, Jamie, Greg, Matt, Chris, of course. I mean, I've just got the best team to work with. And, I think people would be surprised how many would love to join our team because we hear it all the time. I wish I had more money. There's a couple guys I would hire in a heartbeat if I could, but I just don't have the money to do it. And that's the frustrating thing. But this has changed. The job has changed. I wouldn't say it's for the better as far as the game. I wouldn't say it's for the better. And I've said this before. I knew what was going to happen. I knew exactly what was going to happen when it came to NIL. It's like everything else in this world. The very best, meaning the billionaires, those are the people who walk away with all the money. And then everybody else who's kind of in the game, they kind of get screwed. They don't, sure, some people make some money, but they don't get the same kind of money. And then your job is up every single year, where before, at least you got an education. And for me, if college football would do one thing, I would be happy. I wouldn't say be happy, but I'd be okay with what's happening with the NFL, NIL. And that would be, I think that if a guy does not work at the original school, if he's not going to make it and be, they ought to be able to have a scholarship to finish out the education part of things. I mean, if we're really going to be student athletes and we're really going to be there and school is going to be important, they should allow the kids, because kids will get there and they'll realize, okay, I'm not good enough to be at this level, or I don't have the drive, that some of these guys do to be as successful as they are. Therefore, I'll still play. I'll still, work out. I'll still be, like a scout team guy, whatever the case may be. Just let me graduate from here, because that's really one of the things that I wanted to accomplish. And so I really wish that would happen. I doubt it will, but it would be nice if that were to happen. All right. What will happen first? Notre Dame win the national title, or men's basketball returns to the NCAA tournament? What do you think, Jamie?
I don't think this one's close, Mike. I think the national title in football, it's not like you said for basketball.
It isn't. And it's a tough thing. And I think in fairness to Shrews, and I've mentioned this before, this is the fallout of NIL. It just is. And this is the fallout of the situation right now. And you're not going to see a lot of great. You will be hard pressed to find teams that are both great in college football and in basketball, because you can't do both well. You just don't have enough money to do it. And so I really think, sadly, this is just going to be the reality for college basketball at Notre Dame for a while. There'll probably be years where they have more success than others. But I think to be a consistent NCAA tournament, it's going to be very difficult because so much is put into football, and that's just the way it is. All right. Is it just me, or 2027 recruiting got off to a slow start? We've already talked about that. I think you're just going to have to wait until after March, after junior day, see who is scheduling official visits, and then we'll have a better understanding of where it is. But we've been through this so many times before. You don't want to panic. There were times where we panicked in March and May and June, all those types of things, and it really didn't matter. It ended up working out well in the end. Same thing with the portal. Let's just wait and see what the results are before anybody panics. All right. Last question. How does Marcus Freeman navigate the quarterback room in the fall when Gerard comes on the team, so the other two don't hit the portal next January? Or is there a plan to only get and again, I look, there's no way they're keeping all three of those quarterbacks. There's just not. And you may only keep one. You just may only keep one. And that is why it's very important that they land somebody in 2027. You have to. If Teddy Gerard were to jump ahead of Noah Grubbs and Blake Ebert, how long are those guys going to stick around? I don't know. Maybe Blake Ebert sticks around because he wants a degree and Notre Dame's fine with that. I don't know. Maybe Noah Grubbs sticks around and says, you know what? It's time, like anything could happen. It's your first year, let's see. So I got to figure those two will stick around, but I don't know that for a fact, especially if Teddy were to jump Noah. I could see a situation where Noah would say, you know what, it's not going to work out for me here. I leave. But it's so important to land somebody in 2027, Jamie. It really is. And I hate to say it, but you're going to have to land somebody who's got something up here already. You can't get a real big developmental guy because, if CJ's gone, and by all thoughts and, people think he will be, you're going to be in a world of hurt next year if you only have one guy coming back. Thoughts here?
Yeah, I think that is also one of the things that the good and bad about having a guy who is like a highly recruited guy like CJ Carr. You get him, and he's obviously super talented. He could be, top 5 pick in the NFL draft. Like, that is possible. So you might get 2 years of him as a high level starter there, and he goes to the thing, and like, how much you really couldn't ask for more of a guy playing that level and then becoming a high pick. But when you have a guy who starts for multiple years, you're going to have people leave, and then it's going to be harder to attract the next guy. Or when you attract guys and then all of a sudden there's a competition, then a bunch of other guys are going to leave. And if you think about it, Notre Dame was pretty lucky the last few years that someone like Steve Angeli, Minchie, those guys stuck around enough to at least be in the competition, and then before that they left. And now that those guys are gone, it's like if you don't hit on the next guys and they don't become the next Angeli and Minchie or Carr or whatever, then you're in tough there with the depth. And because if you let's just say this year that Gerard ends up winning the backup job by the end of the year, right? Just by the end of the year, he's the backup. Well, I guess Grubbs could stick around and say, hey, I'm going to try to win the job. It's probably not likely. Like, I don't know if there's nothing that Marcus Freeman can do to protect against that. If that's how Grubbs sees it, I'm not going to have any chance of winning the job, so I'm out. There's nothing that they can do there. He'll go somewhere else where he thinks he has a better opportunity. And if that's the case, they'll sign somebody in 2027. But if that person thinks, well, Gerard quarterback, that makes it tougher for that guy. So even if you wanted to say, well, we got to get 2 quarterbacks in 2027, you could maybe do that, but it's not going to be easy to get the second guy. And if you brought in somebody from the portal, well, you have to pay a guy a certain amount.
Yeah.
And if you pay a guy a certain amount, well, he better be the starter. And so it's tough, Mike. It's really tough.
This is going to be the problem for all the best schools. It just is, because what are you going to do? You mentioned, because everybody's probably, when you were saying that, we're thinking, well, just go in the portal. Well, it costs a lot of money to get a quarterback in the portal, and anybody you want to come in and compete with Teddy and Noah, it's going to cost a lot of money. That's just the way it is. And again, then do you make Noah and Teddy mad because you just put somebody in there to compete with them? And they thought, okay, well, I'm the next guy if CJ is gone, So then do they get frustrated and want to go out of the portal? And so it's a tough situation to be in. It's a good problem to have. But speaking of which, did you happen to see, I think it was On 3, one of their idiots did like a preview of the top returning quarterbacks, and they had CJ Carr at like 12. I was just like, what are you high?
No,
I mean, they had Arch Manning at 1, and I'm like, the whole world thought he should have been benched, most of the year. Thought that Arch Manning should have been benched most of the year. You're going to put him at 1? They had Levitt ahead of him. They had Julian Sayin. They had just tons of these. He was seriously like 12th. And I'm like, how high are you? What are you watching that you think? I mean, I wouldn't trade CJ Carr for any quarterback in the country, any of them. I don't care. They had the guy from Georgia. He was ahead of him. They had Mencha, the guy from Duke, going to Miami ahead of him. I'm like, what do you? I just don't get this. But it is what it is. All right, folks, that's going to be it for the show. I hope you enjoyed that. We are going to talk a whole lot about O-line and D-line next week, which is Jamie and I's favorite subject. We're going to talk O-line, D-line next week. I'm fired up. You fired up, Jamie?
I'm fired up.
I'm fired up. I cannot wait. Looking forward to that. We will talk to you guys next week on Power Hour. And go enjoy the sun if you're getting some sun. It's going to be nice. It's just been beautiful here. What's it been like up there in Toronto?
It's been not beautiful. It's been cold. It snowed too much. We're gonna get dumped on again this week. So it is what it is. It's
77 and sunny tomorrow. I just cannot wait. It was 65 yesterday, 65 again today. It's just beautiful. I just love it. So, all right. We will talk to you guys next week on Power Hour. Thanks for listening.